So we're trying to do all those things we can to make state government smaller, more efficient, more accountable, and I'm proud to say that we're making good progress, and part of it is it also helps that we have a strong agricultural economy, and revenue from agriculture is exceeding expectations, and instead of spending that, we're going to use that to reduce property taxes and invest in significant reform and improvement of education, including a whole new teacher leadership and compensation system, which we're presently working through the legislature.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Iowa is often referred to as the heartland of America, especially during presidential elections. Do you think that Iowa's position on gun control is especially important right now during all the controversy?
Well, it's interesting. We like to say Iowa's the heartland of America, and obviously we get a lot of attention because we have the First Nation precinct caucuses. You asked a question about, with what's happened at the national level, the gun control issue. I don't expect any action in the Iowa legislature on that issue. You need to know when the Democrats controlled the governorship in both houses of the legislature, they actually passed a law that took away discretion from county sheriffs from denying concealed weapons permits, but instead put guidelines in the state law. As a result of that, my opponent received the endorsement of the NRA. So I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe that disarming honest law-abiding citizens is the answer, and that's despite the fact that the NRA endorsed my opponent. So, but I also think on both sides of the aisle in the Iowa legislature, we're not likely to see more gun controls. We also, frankly, have major manufacturers in this state of firearms and also ammunition, and we're working to try to attract more of them to our state.
Questions? Back there. Paul.
What do you think the biggest difference is from your previous terms in the 1980s and 90s and now?
Social media. That's the thing that's changed. What we're doing right now, we couldn't have done when I was governor before. Also, the way I got back into the governor's race is there's two young men from Davenport, Michael Bluchlow and Ted Stopulus. They were seniors at the Drake Law School, and they started a movement on Facebook to draft me to run for governor again. Now, they weren't old enough to vote when I was governor before, and Facebook didn't exist. But nevertheless, they got about 10,000 people to sign up, even convinced my kids who were teenagers when I was governor before. They hated it. But they actually got on board and recommended and supported me running again for governor. So I eventually did, and I asked both of those guys, they both had graduated from law school, were in law practice, but I asked them to join the governor's staff, and they are on the staff now. And also, Tim Albrecht is my communications director. He started the Bean Walker blog many years ago, and he's very knowledgeable on social networking, and so we're really trying to recognize it's a new era, and this is a wonderful way to communicate. And I do a lot of the Skype for School with schools, everything from college students like you to high school and middle school and grade school kids from all over the state of Iowa.
Over here, did you have a question?
Yeah. Do you think the future of the Midwest and all of the other states in the Midwest relies upon relationships like what you have with the Chinese future president?
I think it's really important because we are in a global economy, China in particular, but also last year I went to Brazil and Chile. There's also a lot of opportunity for trade there, and they have growing economies as well. This coming year, I'm probably going to be going to Italy and Kosovo and Czech Republic and Switzerland. So yes, and a lot of the investments that we're seeing made in our state are also coming from overseas. In addition to that, obviously, I think it's important that we build on our own strength, agriculture, and then through biosciences, all kinds of new products that we can produce and process within our state. We're also in Iowa very strong in insurance and financial services, And in advanced manufacturing, we have companies like John Deere and Alcoa and Winnebago and Kemen and Vermeer. So, you know, you gotta have a diversified economy, but I'm excited about the opportunities that we have to build international trade, and obviously we want to do all we can to be competitive, and that's one of the reasons why we had this meeting on the locks and dams, because obviously being able to ship our products as well as getting raw materials in the most economical way possible. It's also not only economically benefit, but it also reduces the use of energy. Barge transportation uses a lot less energy than trucks or even railroad.
Governor, I have a question for you. We're talking in the class, and I'm going to have actually a question on an exam next week. What do you think what states comprise the Midwest? Do states west of Iowa, the Plains states, do you think they're in the Midwest? Is Missouri a Midwestern state? What do you think?
Yes, I would say, best, I would say that North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas would be part of the Midwest. Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, obviously Illinois, Indiana, and I would include Michigan and Ohio as well. That would be probably a comprehensive look at the Midwest. Some of those states west of us also consider themselves part of the Western governors as well. But right now, the state with the strongest economy is North Dakota. And North Dakota, of course, because they've discovered the Bakken oil fields, and through the use of fracking oil and natural gas, they now have the lowest unemployment and the strongest economy in the whole country. And so the Midwest economy is actually stronger than that in the East Coast or the West Coast. Right now, I think the Midwest is one of the strongest areas in those states west of us, because of the energy supply they have, are one of the advantages that our region has right now.
Any other questions? Clark?
Yeah. Given the Second Amendment and the current controversy and just sort of the history in general, would you say that firearms and guns are an important part of our culture in America?
Absolutely, they have been from the very beginning of the Republic. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution, including the Second Amendment, were essential in order to get the United States Constitution ratified. And I grew up on a farm. I grew up hunting and fishing and trapping and all that sort of stuff. And I have a son, my youngest son, Marcus. He's an avid hunter and fisherman. And but there's just a long history, especially in rural America, of support for firearms and the Second Amendment. Also, a lot of people are very fearful of an intrusive government that would take away their rights, and consequently, that's one of the reasons why I think people feel so strongly. I think there are things we can do to protect ourselves. I think we need to do a better job of dealing with issues like bullying in schools. We had an anti-bullying conference here that was really well attended, a lot of good ideas. I think dealing with mental health issues and making sure that people with mental problems don't have access to firearms. People that commit crimes and are felons, they lose their right to firearms. So there are some things we can do to protect the public, but the honest, law-abiding citizen feels that why should their rights be taken away because you have some people who disobey other laws. And I think we have to make sure that we're doing all we can to protect people, but also people very strongly about their rights. And I can tell you in our state, it's an issue that I know is a very divisive issue, but it's also an issue that people have real strong feelings about.
Do you think that there are values that define the Midwest as a culture? I mean, we have to write a paper about this at the end. Do you believe that the Midwest actually has its own culture?
I don't know that I heard or understood the whole question, but you asked about the Midwest and the culture and what kind of binds us together.
What kind of values do you think of when you think of the Midwest? And do you think that those values stick enough to define us as our own culture?
Well, one of the things that I think about the Midwest is we value a strong work ethic. I think family and education are important. in Iowa and other states in the Midwest have always valued education. We have some of the finest colleges and universities in the country. I think those are important assets. But I also think that, and I think this is one of the selling points on the Midwest, is people are, for the most part, hardworking, honest, straightforward, sincere people. I think that's one of the things that impressed Xi Jinping when he came to Iowa. Iowans were very friendly and very open and very accepting of him coming from a different culture and obviously a wholly different system. But, so I think the friendliness and hospitality, the work ethic and our commitment to education are things that are special qualities that the Midwest can be proud of.
Governor Robin Johnson, again, I'll close here. I know you're busy. I'll close with one last question, probably the most important one here. When I mentioned the governor's office, you shared a secret of yours, or maybe not a secret, that you switched from being a Cubs fan to a Cardinals fan. This is the Cubs year, I gotta tell you. So what do you think? What's your prediction this spring?
Well, the last time the Cubs won the World Series was 1908. If you want to read a book about it, read Crazy 08. It's a great book, and it kind of tells the history of what was going on in the world in 1908. There were no teams south of St. Louis, or none in the south. There was none west of there either. But you know, I was a long-suffering Cubs fan, but after what the Cardinals did the year before last, and I have a longtime friend who is a Cardinals fan, and I did get a chance to see Stan Musial play when he was playing for the Cardinals, and as you know, he just recently passed away. He and Ted Williams were two of the greatest hitters of all time. I hope the Cubs do better, but I'm doubtful that they're going to win the World Series.
We have
Wrigley Field, it's a great place. It's a wonderful old-time ballpark. They were the last ones to put in lights, and they do it. It's a really good old-time, old-fashioned ballpark, but I just don't have a lot of confidence the Cubs are going to be a contender.
Nice recovery, but this is the year for us Cub fans. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for your leadership in Iowa and in the Midwest Governors Association. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks to your class.
Okay.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
He didn't even know how to turn off his own Skype.
He said that was the biggest difference between now and then was the social networking. He didn't know how to
It's
use
not
it.
his fault, he's older.
They don't even know how to do it. That's why Mark said.
My mom barely knows how to use Skype. My brother had a trainer.
So these were good questions. I thought she asked some very good questions of him, and he did it. He's a good politician. He escaped that Cardinals question.
I was actually, and the way you put him, and the way you described him before this, I was actually like, okay, I'll give him a chance. But he was surprisingly reasonable for a Republican. He's not at all like the ones that run on a national level for like Senate or anywhere in Congress at all, or for president. He's much nicer than those guys.
Yeah. I had a chance to meet him and have a glass of wine at the governor's mansion, and we talked 30, 45 minutes. And the way to really meet these people is get them talking outside of politics. And that's why we talked baseball. And he got into it, and then he told me he was a traitor. But anyway, that's how you really get to meet these people. And believe me, some of them I've met, they couldn't come in here and communicate that way. You wouldn't want to go sit down and have a cup of coffee or a beer with them. I think Branstad is the type that you would. I think he's a nice guy. And again, you find out, you're kind of brought up that you hate the enemy Democrats and Republicans, but when you actually meet some of these office holders, they're people just like we are. Most of them are pretty good people. They work hard, they work incredibly long hours, and I really think we take it for granted and should be grateful that they put this amount of time in on our behalf, regardless of party.
I wish we'd had more time to ask him questions.
20 minutes was pretty good. That was 5 minutes over. Yeah, Paul.
I thought it was also kind of crazy that two Drake law students petitioned online to get him to go back out for office, and that's how he did it. But there were, I mean, he didn't really explain any other factors. Do you know of any other factors besides that, or was it just kind of like two kids, like, just put this like page on Facebook and then a bunch of people like it, he became governor again?
There's got to be an inner desire to do it. I mean, you just can't be approached by a couple college students with a petition. Believe me, you've got to have that ambition and desire to go campaign 18 hours a day and then get up at 9 o'clock and speak and have your whole day scripted out. You've got to have the desire to do it. It wasn't just, the two students. It was broader, and a lot of it came within him. But I do think it's interesting that he said that social media is the biggest change from when he was governor previously to now. And I don't doubt that at all.
To go off that, when did he come back into governorship, and also when did he leave, and do you know why he left? Or
2 years ago, 2011.
Yeah, he was elected again in 2010, because I think he's up again this year.
Okay.
But he had held office from 82 to 2002?
He said 83 to 1999.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So then Tom Vilsack was elected. Tom Vilsack's President Obama's Secretary of Agriculture. Vilsack was elected 2 terms. He was a former mayor of Mount Pleasant, by the way, a small town mayor that rose to be governor. And then Chet Culver, who's the son of a former Senator John Culver, was elected for 1 term. So the Democrats held the office for 12 years. And as you heard, he wasn't shy about talking about the shortcomings of his predecessor, Culver. And I think that was one of the reasons that he ran as well, the feeling that the Democrats had come and basically screwed up the state. Okay, so part of it was definitely ideological. He wanted to come back. Part of it was just a feeling that he had left the state in good shape, and look what you've done, And he came in and he beat Culver. It wasn't even close. So, yeah, he was, so that's 20 years he was governor before? So my math went. 16, I'm sorry. 16, and now he's elected again. He'll held the office 20 years. Will he run again? I don't know. I wish I would have asked him that now that I think about it. But at his age, I mean, he's got kids. He was telling great stories about his kids when they were younger, running around the governor's mansion, and the security when they went out on dates. I mean, I'm not going to repeat them, but it's just hilarious. I mean, he could write a book at some point, I think, on the dynamics of a guy being elected governor, and what it's like to live day to day as a governor in the spotlight, and just try to carry out a normal life in the public eye. Any other? Yeah.
It's not really a question, but it's something that's kind of come up in my head just now, just an idea. It's starting to seem like there's a definite difference, and it's not just that the nation isn't homogenous in terms of some political parties, just polarized. There's Democrats and there's Republicans, and that's as simple as it gets, and that's how simple it is. But it seems like the way they are depends a lot on the states they're from. He seems pretty different from what we associate with being mainstream Republicans nowadays, which are the ones we see on TV constantly yelling, "You lie," It seems.
Now, before you go too far, Steve King is from Iowa, and he's, I think, more of what you're talking about.
Steve King?
He's a congressman. Not New York. I think that's him. He's going to run for the open Senate seat over there. So, but what you're describing is true. I talked to a reporter yesterday in Chicago. She's from, have you heard of the Economist magazine? I think so. She was a Midwest reporter, and I was asking her what characteristics do you see in the Midwest, and she said people are friendly. People are just friendlier here than other parts of the country. And by the way, I'm going to try to get her down to speak to class next month, I think. She's going to come down the train. She's very anxious to come down. And she wants to almost interview you as much as you talk to her. She's anxious, she's interested in this class, what we're doing here, and I think she's going to be here another year, and then she goes back for another assignment. She had a chance, and this is interesting, she had a chance to be based in Washington, New York, or Los Angeles, or Chicago. She picked Chicago because of the Midwest, because of the people. I'll let her tell that story. Anything else on today before we can get to Patchwork Nation here and get back on our schedule? Very good questions, all of you, and I thought